So, running pairs work. The way to run pairs work has a couple of steps really. First of all, you need to get people into their pairs, get them set up in their pairs. It helps to sit with chairs at 45-degree angles. There's various bits of research about what's optimal in terms of speaking together and talking together, and that's apparently the optimum. Because head-on can be a little confronting, and just sat next to each other, you're not really completely engaging with each other, so 45 degrees seems to help. So get people set up in their pairs at about 45 degrees. I would also say that if you're doing multiple sets of pairs, as we normally do in a compassion circle, try and get people to switch and work with different people, and even in the first place encourage people to work with someone they don't know so well, so that through doing the pairs work, as well as the thinking that comes out, people are getting to know each other and they're building relationships. So it serves multiple purposes that way. So you get people set up in their pairs with someone they preferably don't know so well, sat at 45 degrees, ready to speak and listen, and then you need to set them up with how to do that. So the how to do that is important because, again, to ensure equality, even if you give 3 minutes each, let's say, unless people are set up to do that in a particular way, it's easy to kind of jump in with questions or your thoughts, or for people to be with the best will in the world and out of enthusiasm, not actually offering each other brilliant quality of listening. So the way we work with it is a very particular way of listening. It can feel a little odd at first for people, but what we've found is that it does seem to really evoke this environment of equality and help people to be positively disciplined about how they listen to each other, so that people really have that sense of feeling heard and really getting to speak, to kind of hit their own stride and be with their own thoughts rather than the conversation getting redirected by the interests of the other person. So the way we set that up is to invite people that when they're listening to say their partner's name and ask the question. So how are you doing with your self-compassion, or whatever the question might be. How are you doing with caring for yourself? Whatever question you might be looking at. What are your thoughts on how we can create a more compassionate community? Whatever question it is, to say, so Bob, what are your thoughts on creating a more compassionate community? And then once they've asked the question, to just listen. Just listen. They can give verbal nods and, engage in all the wonderful ways that we can let someone know that we are listening, but they're not asking further questions, they're not reflecting back, they're not paraphrasing. Lots of stuff that people get taught as good listening in some context is fantastic listening. I'm not criticising that. What we found is when we get people listening in this way, where they're just listening, they're not interjecting at all with their words and thoughts, that the person doing the talking really has space to think and take their thinking in the direction they want to, in whatever direction their thoughts take them. They can go on their own journey rather than their journey being directed or redirected by the person doing the listening. So setting people up 45 degrees in pairs, preferably with someone you don't already know or you don't know so well. One person's going to speak, one person's going to listen, and the person who's listening says their partner's name, asks the question, and then just listens. And the only thing they can do is if their partner genuinely seems to have run out of things to say, like they really seem to have kind of got stuck, or they're not just sort of sitting thinking, because sitting quietly thinking while the other person listens, that's fine. People can be uncomfortable about it, but it's great to encourage people to know that that's fine. Sitting quietly thinking is one thing, but when they have that moment looking up and kind of clearly seeming lost, then you can ask, and what else? Or repeat the original question. So you're not adding a new question, you're not rescuing them with, oh, don't worry, let's talk about something else, or whatever else you might be inclined to do out of discomfort or a sense of wanting to take care of them. But you're really encouraging them to take the space, to just be with one question, just be with their thoughts around that question, and keep digging deeper and digging deeper. And our experience is that that can be really, really rich for people. Just getting to continue doing that thinking and dedicate themselves to that quality of thinking with that one question and keeping going with it. And then, of course, you switch over So you've got to make sure that when you switch over, that the person who is doing the listening is reminded that they're just to say their partner's name, ask the question, and then just listen. And if their partner really clearly seems to have run out of things to say, then you can give them a little help, a little nudge by saying, "And what else?" or asking the original question. So hopefully that gives you enough of the nuts and bolts of how to run pairs thinking. Normally I'd recommend, if you're facilitating, not to join in with the pairs if at all possible. Hopefully you've got a host. Then if the numbers are odd, then the host can join in and be part of a pair, or if they're even in the rest of the group, then you and the host can sit out and the pairs can just have their time to think. Because if you're facilitating, it can be a lot to jump in and listen and then jump out and facilitate and then jump in and listen. As wonderful as it might be to get your time to do some thinking too, it can be a lot to hold. So I'd suggest, particularly at least when you're starting out, but in general I would suggest sitting out and letting the group have their pairs thinking time, and you can reflect on the question yourself in your own space while they're doing their thinking. So hopefully that gives you a clear sense of how to run pairs, the nuts and bolts of it. And as with the rounds, there's another video with some additional tips just to help you get even more comfortable and proficient with running pairs work in this way. So good luck with it.